Good afternoon. I think most of you who are presumably are based in Asia. This is 9 o'clock in the morning in Vienna. Greetings to all of you. Let me sort of introduce myself because I was sort of recruited to help Aiko chair, partly for technical reasons. It would be nice to have somebody here in Vienna. My name is Hironobu Shibuya. First of all, disclaimer, I've since retired from two responsibilities, which apparently I've been identified with. I was advisor to the Nippon Foundation on disability matters, and concurrently I was on the board of APCD, Asia Pacific Development Center for Disabilities, about which you know well. That presumably is a credential put me up here, but basically, Aiko, who is a dear friend of mine and colleague and comrade, is the one who is going to chair the meeting. I'm making sure, with the help of Sumita, to make sure this will go smoothly. As all of you are aware, it is a very long session. It isn't so much it's too long, but it is important enough subject. So rather than to be anxious about talking all at once, I think what it's called for, presumably, is reflective of what we see from a point of view of those of us who are involved in the disability issues in Asia. So that's my take. So let me, apart from that, and I disclaimer, I have been in and out of United Nations system. I'm sort of like a former special advisor to a lot of things. I was a special advisor to the Secretary General on the Earth Summit. At that time, in fact, I worked with Ambassador Tomiko of Singapore, whom many of you know. And I was also special advisor to UNICEF. And then that was a part of responsibility, and I came to Bangkok, and I loved it, so I retired from UNICEF. And then I worked with Save the Children and Helen Keller, a number of NGOs. Actually, not so much I was necessarily focused on disabilities, but Helen Keller is probably one of the most famous person with disability, and I was honored to serve the foundation which was created by her for nearly 20 years. So that's enough for myself. And so I would ask Aiko, if you were there, hear me, probably...
Yes.
Okay, good to talk to you. I saw you yesterday also. And introduce yourself and ask all the panelists to sort of, introduce themselves. And, we have plenty of time, so we don't have to worry time limit, okay?
Okay.
Leave it to you, Aiko.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. Good afternoon from Bangkok, Thailand, and then good morning to all of you at the venue. And then, yes, welcome to this session entitled Asia Summit, which sounds very interesting. And then we are empowered with all the women panelists here, as if we were as if to rectifying existing gender inequality here in this region. But the theme of this panel is accessibility, where we like to share good practices and why good practices are good practices, key ingredients, and then perhaps maybe challenges. But then we take it from there, as Hiro-san said, to have a more relaxed dialogue rather than stiff web seminar-ish kind of thing. Just to introduce myself, my name is Aiko Akiyama. I am now working at the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific as a social officer, predominantly working on disability inclusive development and disability rights for almost last 20 years. Worked on contributing to the drafting process of a Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, advocating for disability inclusion in SDGs, Sendai framework, and currently responsible also with other colleagues on disability inclusion within the United Nations system, of course, in our organization. So yes, I think it's a good idea to just go around the panel and then I will ask the person, then the person just spend 1 minute to introduce herself. So may I ask Nurul, Huda, Bute, Awang, Haji, Muhin? I really apologize for mispronunciation of your name. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Aiko. I'm Huda from Pusat Ehsan Al-Ameerah Al-Hajjah Maryam from Brunei Darussalam. Pusat Ehsan is a non-government organization providing education, rehabilitation, and employment to the people with disabilities in Brunei Darussalam. So, I've been in Pusat Ehsan for about 12 years now, and we are actually advocating for the rights of people with disabilities as well. And I've been also attending trainings, workshops, and conference to advocate for the rights of people with disabilities as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So may I call you Nurul?
Yeah, Huda.
It's Nurul. And then sorry, may I clarify, you're working in the government or CSO?
No, I'm working on NGO, yeah.
NGO, all right, from Brunei Darussalam.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next person is Miss Eunyong Lee, please.
Hello, my name is Eunyong Lee, and actually I'm working for a consulting firm called Excolo, and we are doing a pro bono work for an NGO who's closely working with disability issues in North Korea, DPRK. So that led me to have a chance to speak today. And my the career background is more focusing on the global public health, and I have studied the international development. Hope I can share some interesting points of a non-disability organization person, but I still think as a disability issue can be a part of course, it's a global health issue, and also for the international development, it is the important part. So I would like to share some ideas, and I would like to learn more from you guys. Thank you for inviting me here.
Thank you, Miss Lee, and she's from the Republic of Korea. And yes, it's very interesting to hear from you because you're doing a mainstreaming of disability in international cooperation on accessibility. Next person is Miss Phyllis Choo from Singapore. Your mic is muted. Could you unmute yourself?
So sorry. Yeah. I'm a director with SG Enable, which is a focal agency for disability in Singapore. My work mainly revolves around anything to do with corporate strategy and business strategy. And I also deal with policy matters as they affect my organization and as they affect the disability community in Singapore. There's a lot to be done in this area in Singapore, and we are very happy to be playing a key role in this. And I'm really glad and I'm really honored that I was invited here to speak at this conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Choo. And then next person is Ms. Marissa Lee Medjeral-Mills from, again, also Singapore.
Hi, everyone. I am Marissa. I run an organization called Disabled People's Association, also in Singapore, and we are part of the wider Disabled People's International network, which is also, involved in the firstly the lobbying and then later pushing through the implementation of the Convention, the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We are a organization of persons with disabilities, for persons with disabilities, and we provide a platform for persons with disabilities to have their voices heard in policy matters, but also in terms of pushing forward accessibility in the workplace, in education, and in the public sphere.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. And the next person is Ms. Habishan Taklau from Indonesia. Do we have Miss Havishan? Okay, looks like she's missing at this point. So last but not least, Miss Kumiko Fujiwara from Japan.
Hi. Hello everyone. My name is Kumiko Fujiwara. I represent the DPI Women Network and visual impairment.
Visual impairment. Thank you very much. We look forward to your perspectives on accessibility and good practices.
Kumiko, just so you know, your sounds are echoing. If you could handle from your end, that would be great. Okay?
すみません、声がエコーしてるようですが、すみません、多分私のマイクですね。
Okay, all right. Maybe you might want to deal with that, and you can, for now, mute yourself, and then you can deal with two of you. Two of you can deal with it. Thank you, Hiro-san. So, without further ado, may I then ask our first panelist? But remember, this is about accessibility. So, I would appreciate if you can focus on your good practice through the lens of accessibility. What I mean by accessibility is accessibility to built environment, and accessibility to information, communication technology, accessibility to services, just like you're seeing a sign language interpreter here from a viewpoint of persons with disabilities. And all right, so Ms. Nurul, you have 5 to 7 minutes, please. Go ahead. What you want to say? Could you unmute your microphone?
Sorry, the presentation, please. Thank you again, Ms. Aiko. As of August 2021, the Department of Community Development in Brunei has reported that the number of registered people with disabilities in Brunei is 7,730. The 2019 survey by Department of Community Development showed 75 people with disabilities are working in the public sector and 35 in the private sector. 10,866,256 has been allocated as visually impaired pension, mental disabilities allowance, disability pension, and disability allowance extended to 4,050 recipients by the government. Brunei Darussalam has seen an increase in the number of child with disabilities cases every year referred to the Child Development Center over a decade in 2020. About 766 cases compared to 2010, which is 400 cases. So this is where we come in. Next slide. So the policies and legislation related to people with disabilities in Brunei Darussalam ratified Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, CRPD, in April 2016. Brunei Darussalam recognizes the rights of people with disabilities and has introduced a number of laws that are related. Amongst these legislation available in the country are Old Age and Disability Pension Act, Education Act, Compulsory Education Act, Building Control Order, National Land Transport Policies, Person with Disabilities Order, and Care Provider Allowance. So the general information about Pusat Ehsan is a non-government and non-profit charitable organization committed to providing quality education, rehabilitation, and vocational training programs for people with disabilities since October 2000. Pusat Ehsan serves individuals with a variety of disabilities, which is cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, autism spectrum disorder, hearing impairment, visual impairment, as well as individuals with global developmental delays and intellectual disability. Pusat Ehsan's programs support individuals with disabilities in education, vocational training, and rehabilitation. We recognize the need of these individuals to be independent in society and the provision of appropriate activities to achieve this. We believe in involving a network of family, caregivers, volunteers, and the general community in providing services for them. So the curriculum framework, Pusat Ehsan, constant pursuit of becoming a center of excellence, gave birth to the curriculum transformation project. The curriculum is a document containing the knowledge, skills, and learning outcomes which tailored to the students' needs and way of learning. For information, Brunei has not come up with a special education curriculum, so our organization come up with one. And the Pusat Ehsan curriculum framework was initially developed by a team of UBD, Darussalam University professors, and was later on carried out and completed by a curriculum development consultant from Singapore. The curriculum provides a broad overview of how educational institution structures and organizes its curriculum in line with Pusat Ehsan's vision and mission. So the curriculum framework content covers the following domains, areas, and aspects are the following: functional academic learning, physical, personal, and social learning, career and vocational learning. The Pusat Ehsan program, the educational program, places individuals in classes according to their chronological age. In this way, they will participate in age-appropriate educational programs. These programs help prepare the students for school readiness by providing language, social, emotion, physical, and cognitive development. The classes also provide the students learning opportunities which engage them in different learning experiences. This enables them to make sense of the world around them as they are provided with different educational tricks. And the vocational training programs prepare our trainees for job opportunities within Pusat Ehsan and for the open market. My Ability Counts project is a public awareness campaign designed to encourage support from the public and private sectors in providing job opportunities to our trainees. The vocational programs as part of the transition years is directed towards helping students gradually assimilate into different stages of adult life, such as home, community, leisure, and work through home-based and community-based instruction. At this stage of learning, students will focus on more clearly on their areas of interest as well as establish their intended pathways beyond school and into the communities in which they live. The rehabilitation program aims to help every people with disabilities to achieve their maximum functional ability with regards to their daily living activities. The program includes physiotherapy, occupational therapy, language and communication, and psychology. The physical rehabilitation units offer intervention and treatment regimes for various disabilities, ranging from neurological and musculoskeletal conditions. Strategies consist of individualized and group activities which conform with the current evidence-based practice in both professions. With a small number of dedicated staff, the rehabilitation program has grown to provide more than 3,000 treatment sessions annually. So the success stories, with the programs provided, about 80% of our students with disabilities has moved to the mainstream school for an inclusive education. We also have managed to provide employment to about 50% of our students with disabilities into several sectors such as in-house employment, hotels, restaurants, and local banks. We currently have about 350 students with disabilities registered under Pusat Ehsan. Also, Pusat Ehsan was awarded the ASEAN Outstanding Social Welfare and Development Award, ASWADA, under non-government organization, civil society organizations category, in recognition of its achievement as one of the longest-running organizations advocating for the development of people with disabilities in Brunei Darussalam. So currently, the services we provide is free of charge, but we do encourage parents to contribute in whatever the way they can to help lighten our operating costs. Pusat Ehsan organizes events annually to raise funds to cover its operational costs as well. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, Pusat Ehsan has diverted into an income-generating measure, such as selling food and handmade products in order to sustain itself, as Pusat Ehsan only relies on public donations and fundraising events. So our future steps is Pusat Ehsan is also in the process of establishing the first special school in Brunei Darussalam for people or children with disabilities. with our own curriculum tailored for the diverse needs of children with disabilities. This school can accommodate about 200 students with disabilities. Also, a vocational building to provide extensive in-house training and courses for employment for the people with disabilities. This can provide more people with disabilities with skills to achieve economic and social independence. This building can accommodate about 150 students with disabilities. Thank you for your attention.
Very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Nurul. I think I want to ask you a question about the accessibility part of your country, whether your country, how your country ensures accessibility of built environment and then information to provide specialized services for persons with disabilities. Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, okay. So going back to the policies and legislation related to people with disabilities in Brunei Darussalam, the building control order, it is to ensure that persons with disabilities are able to easily gain access to and exit from the whole or part of a building, and that persons with disabilities, children between 90 centimeter and 120 centimeter in height, caregivers of infants and nursing women are able to carry out their activities with the building with reasonable ease. Also, the National Land Transport Policy, it takes full account of the needs of the disabled and mobility impaired during planning and design of transport infrastructure and services. They consult appropriate user groups, audit schemes prior to implementation, to install barrier-free access on public transport and appropriate visual and audio adaptation.
Okay.
And
all right.
also the, yeah, okay.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah, that's all.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. Okay, people who have questions from the audience, please take a note and we will do that after we finish all the panelists' presentation. Thank you very much. And then our next presenter is Ms. Eunyong Lee. Floor is yours.
Thank you for let me have a chance to talk about this amazing topic. And before I enter the presentation, I would like to inform you that I'm not an expert on the disability issue and not representing South Korea's disability issue either. It is a humble project that I'm introducing, and it's not even fully implemented. I'm not sharing a success story, but this is sharing an ideas, and I would like to have more friends who can work together in the future, and just introducing a less traveled road. Hopefully you can go through the presentation with me in that context. That's my humble request.
Thank you very much.
Please. Next slide, please. Okay, the two projects that we planned are the efforts that we put on. Actually, through one of the NGO, I will just call it a organization because they do not want to be exposed, and for the reason, please understand that. And that NGO, my firm Excolo, has a chance to support them as a pro bono. So it was not the profitable. It's not the looking for the profit, but we thought this is a very noble cause, and we would like to find a way. So Excolo has been supporting this project, and actually it was quite innovative because it was the idea, the end goal idea is quite new for there. The one is a greenhouse farming for persons with disability for their economic independence. And the other idea was a Western-style bakery running by disabled in Pyongyang. And our target market was a diplomatic community and the international organization representative in Pyongyang who might miss their Western bread. And so it was quite sexy idea, and many of my diplomat friends really loved this idea because they remember that they wanted to have a very authentic Western bread that was something that they really missed abroad. Something like the Korean people miss kimchi when they travel abroad for a long time. So, well, next slide, please. Okay, the concept of greenhouse farm for persons with disability. The reason is probably most of you in this room will know better than me, but this is to lower the risk of the climate vulnerability to grow the vegetable. That's the purpose. The design of greenhouse that you see is a typical greenhouse that you can find in DPRK. This is a much stronger shape, so you can protect one side. The wall is a strong concrete or brick wall, so it's really protecting one side, so it can be more stable. And that was the same design that we wanted, because we do not want to change too many things. That when you're working with a partner who have their own rules, and it's always better to respect their way and to add on the value on what they already have. That was our plan. So we are respecting, we're not introducing the Western or South Korean or Singaporean greenhouse, but we are respecting their way of doing the greenhouse, but trying to make it as the inclusive greenhouse that can the people with disabilities and the other community people do the farming together and grow the vegetable together and share the profit. So we kind of give a message that is people with a disability can still contribute to the community. And they are, because of this, this project is focusing on the people working together with the people with disability. The international society are supporting this project. That was the kind of message that we wanted to deliver. And of course, the increasing the economic contribution in society will change the concept. So, of course, compared to the other countries in pretty similar situation, DPRK have a program for the disabled for a long time ago, and they established the organization KFPD, the Korea Federation for Protection of the Disabled. So they are much advanced than what people are thinking. So through that organization, it is kind of possible to communicate much smoothly, and they have a concept of respecting the people with disability much better than the people imagine in the outside. So our very ambitious goal was running this farm like with inclusive structure, and with all community can participate. And our next goal for this greenhouse farming was not only the greenhouse farming for making a small economic growth, but we had a very ambitious plan to transfer it to the smart farm in the future. But this is very kind of not a really perfect time now, because of the UN sanction, and the US sanction is a big barrier. But on the future, if people with a disability who deserve to have to deserve the technology that the people developed, if that can be implemented there, maybe we can have automated 24 hours operating cloud system farming in DPRK. That's one of the dream projects that we would like to dream for. It's quite ambitious, but I hope something can be done, because this is totally focusing on the humanitarian focus. This is not for the somebody's political or economic goal, but this is for the project that we to beyond the barriers, people can do something. I kind of want to show it as one of the case. Okay, and the next slide, please. Okay, plan of the greenhouse farm for persons with disability. We initiated the greenhouse farming idea to DPRK representative through a organization and planned the project. But Excolo supported that NGO to receive the UN sanction waivers even. So it's listed on the UN sanctioned waivers list in the United Nations Security Council webpage. So we're very proud to obtain it under the name of community-based rehabilitation greenhouse farming for people with a disability in Democratic People's Republic of Korea. But purchasing goods using transportation to supply goods for greenhouse building was still significant challenges for the NGO. Even you have a UN sanctioned waiver, practical way, it is still very difficult. And unluckily, we have obtained the waivers in 2019. You know what happened in the 2020, right? The pandemic was hitting all over the world, and the DPRK decided to close their border on the January of 2020. So after the January 2020, no one was able to travel in and out from North Korea. So in DPRK, after the DPRK closed the border, the A organization wasn't able to access, and it is still a very pity situation. But however, we're not losing our hope. We're continuing extending the UN sanction waiver, so it's still available, and we will continue the project as soon as the border opens. So that's the plan. And next slide, please. The bakery is a little more exciting, but the concept of the Pyongyang Bakery for the persons with disability was that we have communicated with the Korea Federation for Protection of Disabled. They were interested on this project because this is like a vocational training for job creation. But it was not fully confirmed with them yet. It was still ongoing, and we have a great partner in United Kingdom. They have a wonderful vocational education institute called CCCG, the Capital City College Group. They have Westminster Kingsway College, which is a very famous, the chef Gordon Ramsay's from there, and they have a wonderful patissier program. And that school was very excited about the idea, and they surely wanted to cooperate with us to helping out for introducing this Western bakery idea to Pyongyang. So we signed the MOU with the NA organization and Capital City College Group in UK, and we dreamed about making the program for future patissier and barista from DPRK working in Pyongyang. And actually the building the red brick building that you see is the building that we wanted to implement the program. This is the actual building in Pyongyang. So I visited Pyongyang and took the photo. And this is the bakery, the training program that the CCCG has. And the last photo is one of the bakery the kind of how it will look on the future. That's kind of our dream, how it looks like. So next slide, please. Okay, the plan of Pyongyang Bakery is basically like this. Establish a disabled vocational training center in the center part of Pyongyang, which was the building that you saw, and renovate the ground level of vocational training center as a Western-style bakery cafe operated by the trained disabled students, and training DPRK's disabled vocational centers instructor and disabled person in London, Capital City College Group. And after the training, they send them back to the PRK and implementing the vocational course for their future patissier and barista. And operating this Western bakery cafe, selling authentic Western daily bread as like a French local style baguette, sourdough, and like croissants. And we deliver it to those. They have a diplomatic complex in in Pyongyang. So if we deliver it daily base and charge them monthly, it could be a very sustainable income. So it was kind of a cute idea, but it was quite tangible too. The targeting diplomatic district in Pyongyang was the very realistic plan that we had. But next slide, please. Sadly, there are some barriers for the project. The UN sanction and the US sanction is still a big challenge for the NGO and the counterpartner in DPRK to go through. This is a big challenge, even for the humanitarian program. If you are bringing any metal, like even a small screw, a metal made by metal, you can't bring it inside without sanction waivers. So if we are bringing a baking machine, oven, it all needs to have the waivers. This is very complicated situation. So there is lots of wisdom and help is needed. And the COVID-19 also caused the border closure of DPRK. And because of that, it's kind of became more forgotten kind of word. It's very neglected part of the world, the DPRK. Because it's very limited access, and because the DPRK is a little special situation, so they work with people that they can trust. Because sometimes some exaggerated news and some very kind of news that can make people driving the interest, sometimes it's not always true, and those kind of things are not very pleasant for the counterpartners in the DPRK. So they work with a trusted organization, and also there are limited financial resources. That's also a barrier. Next slide, please. So I would like to introduce 3 innovative policies or practices. The effort to step into the neglected area to overcome the extra challenges, and introducing the international cooperation project focusing on sustainability, and positioning the disability topic as a universal value that transcends politics, ideology, and stereotypes. There was 3 innovative things that was implemented in this project. And the future steps, next slide, please. Yes. The future steps, we dream, we will continue to find a way to implement the project, and we'll find the partners, we'll partner with more organizations that has a common goal with this. And we will support KPD to have ownership of the project. But so it will not be our project, it will be their project. That's what we want to see. Because it has to be run by them and it has to be sustained by them. It's not something that a organization where we don't have to have our name there. So we'll keep the project be self-sufficient in the future. That's the goal that we have. This is my very humble presentation. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lee. I like what you said about this ownership project. That should be them, not on the side of people who initiated the project. And in terms of accessibility, I know I'm really stick to this theme of accessibility, but in terms of farming or bakery shop, do you know anything about persons with different disabilities working there? For example, like wheelchair users, if they go to this house, maybe the height of the farming that might be taken as a consideration, or people who are blind, people who are deaf, or in a bakery context. Do you know anything about these diversity and accessibility issues, or how this project deals with?
That's a very, very considerable point, and I think it's very important too. But maybe when we designed the project, we kind of were focusing on make it possible. So we were not able to include all different types of disabilities, but anyway, if we can initiating the project itself was a big step forward, actually. But definitely what you said is very important. When we design the greenhouse and the bakery, those points should be implemented. I think it will be the much fruitful project if we could include more types of disabilities. We'll keep that in mind, and we will include that on the future plan.
In that sense, obviously you are in this conference, so you welcome anybody who will be interested in collaborating with you to make sure this project is universally designed and accessible for persons with different disabilities, right?
Open to learn.
Okay, great. Thank you.
May I just interrupt, Aiko? And
sure.
You know Aiko because you're based in Bangkok. APCD, organization I was a board member, had initiated similar project, although obviously different context, with Yamazaki Bakery, leading Japanese bakery. And basically, just for the point of information, people involved in the project are basically intellectually challenged people, which is a unique, and in fact, I add, it's actually making a profit. Several stores opened up, and the entirety staffed, not entirely, with several people assisting, and a very successful undertaking, which had started about 5 years ago, just as a point of information.
Yes, so
I would definitely go and check.
We'll Hiro-san and then I can be much, more than happy to connect.
Wonderful.
Yes. Okay, great. So those who are in the venue, we can actually see who are in the audience. But Hiro-san can tell us who they are. But our next speaker is Ms. Choo from Singapore and representing SG Enable. So please welcome Ms. Choo, and you have 5 to 7 minutes.
Sure. A very good day to everybody. It's my pleasure to be here today. I'm going to talk a little bit about disability inclusive employment in Singapore and how we promote and support it. Next slide, please. Okay, I've already talked a little bit about SG Enable, so I will not go through it again. Next slide, please. Okay. According to national statistics in 2020, the employment rate in Singapore was around 29% for persons with disabilities, which means that we have around 32,000 persons with disabilities aged 15 to 64 in Singapore. So about 9,000 are employed. So of course, there is obviously room for improvement here. Now, in the absence of legislature mandating hiring of persons with disabilities, there is always an ongoing need to persuade, cajole, convince employers to hire. In 2021, there are a little bit more than 5,000 inclusive employers in Singapore. SG Enable, who plays a key role, I guess, in disability employment, tackles the 3 prongs of ready job seekers, ready employers, and ready environment holistically to achieve positive employment outcomes for persons with disabilities. We win employers over by understanding their needs, mindsets, and motivations, and seeking to achieve win-win outcomes that over time we hope creates a mindset change that can lead to self-sustaining social impact. Next slide, please. This is a simple model we reference that shows the stages in converting an employer from a stage of, let's say, ignorance to awareness, interest, desire, action, and retention. Various policies and practices have been put in place to win over employers and to get them to open doors to employment. So time permitting, I will talk about some government financial assistance schemes, the industry-led Microsoft Enabler program, as well as the newly launched Enabling Mark. Next slide, please. Of course, government comes in with money. The Open Door program grant aims to encourage employers to hire, train, and integrate persons with disabilities. It is an initiative by the Ministry of Family and Social Development and Workforce Singapore. Employers can apply for grants such as the Job Redesign Grant, which supports reasonable accommodations, including job modifications and workplace modifications. The Training Grant for skills upgrading and for employees with disabilities, as well as inclusion training for their colleagues without disabilities. And if employers need HR support, SG Enable provides recruitment, job placement, and job support services free of charge. Next scheme, the Enabling Employment Credit and Jobs Growth Incentive are basically wage offset schemes that support the employment of persons with disabilities. The schemes recognize that they face additional disadvantages in getting hired, especially in the light of the COVID pandemic, which saw Singapore facing an economic downturn. Okay, next slide, please. I'm going to talk about the Microsoft Enabler program next. This is an industry-led initiative. And you can see that it builds in various elements to bring an interested employer to a disability-inclusive employer. Basically, in this program, NPO partners in each country in APAC work with employers to train them on how to be inclusive and how to place persons with disabilities in professional opportunities in tech jobs. The NPOs come in to support employers and persons with disabilities with consultancy on job redesign, workplace accessibility, internship, and so on and so forth. So for example, in SGE, we do capability development for employers. We have HR workshops and disability awareness training. We formulate workplace disability inclusion plans for individual employers, so it's customized. And we provide access to a wide range of employment support services like supported internship, career fairs, and of course, job coach services. But after the first internship, it doesn't stop there. There are opportunities for us to deepen the relationship, go for more internships, more mentorships, and more employment opportunities. Next slide, please. This slide highlights the experience of 3 Singapore participants in the Microsoft Enabler program. I would talk about one of them, Raymond, who is visually impaired. Now, Raymond interned at Microsoft as a partner development manager for 7 months in 2020. And since then, he has graduated and he has secured a job as an IT consultant with NTT Data Singapore, who is one of Singapore's employer partners in this program. Okay, next slide. So lastly, I will talk about the enabling mark, which is the first and the only national level accreditation framework in Singapore that benchmarks employers for practices and outcomes in disability inclusive employment. It is a community partnership with SG Enable developing the program and is supported by the Empowering for Life Fund. So it's a new program. It launched in October 2020, and as of Jan 22, we are pleased to say that there are 90 organizations in Singapore now accredited with the enabling mark. So next slide, please. Down here, you will see Forward Coffee is one of the 6 platinum winners of this award. Forward Coffee is a homegrown social enterprise, and it has been an inclusive employer since the year 2017. So we hope that an award like Enabling Mark will encourage more employers, big and small, to embark on the disability inclusive employment journey. So this is my last slide. And with this, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Choo. I think in this panel, so far, we've been hearing a lot of stories about employment, be it specialized schemes, more like in a social welfare driven scheme, but also international cooperation scheme. But your story is making it more inclusive and then private sector driven employment scheme. However, I'm stubborn and I'm still sticking to this theme of accessibility. So I want to ask you a question. When particularly this Microsoft scheme, and then also this enabling mark, which sounds like a very interesting thing. What are the kind of elements to measure that particular company is disability inclusive? And are there any elements of accessibility?
The employer partners who join this program are given training on workplace accommodation and how to be inclusive and how to be an inclusive employer. That is part of the criteria of this program. And of course, the NPO partners will come in to provide further support on workplace accommodations and really natural and creating natural support in the office. I think through this way, we ensure that the employment experience is pleasant for both the person with disability and for the employer. And of course, along the way, the whole slew of employment support programs that the NPO offers is made available for both the employers and the person with disability.
So what you're saying is that in terms of what individuals with disabilities make a request of accessibility, be it the height of table or that getting into the building and then access to computer. So the private sector, a particular company will respond to that particular request. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, we will provide consultancy services for them and support them to make that happen, because really there is not very much point in placing a person in an internship if he or she cannot benefit from the experience. Yes, that's right.
Right. But this enabling mark, which is more like a certifying program, what are the criteria? Are there any criteria of accessibility?
Just let me take a look at my notes. Okay. We look at a broad range of criteria, and definitely, yes, workplace accessibility and accommodations is one of the criteria. We look at things like the softer aspects as well, like leadership and your culture, your employment practices. But definitely for sure, you have to have workplace accessibility and accommodations as one of the criteria for getting the award.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I mean, Aiko, just let me, there are audiences here after all, and I just wanted to make sure. You're welcome to signal me if you want to intervene, making comments. Okay?
Yeah. Thank you, Hiro-san. We have one more speaker, and then we open up the question and answer. But you can take a note.
I think there's one particular person here is very anxious to talk.
So I had a question about acquired disability. It seems that you're focused on young people with disabilities getting into the workplace. But what about people who are aging, who might already have been workers, who might lose their vision, their mobility, their hearing? Are you also working with people who have acquired disabilities, who have previous work experience?
I think there was a risk to Phyllis, right?
Yeah. All right. Yes, for sure. The programs you see here are not limited by age. For example, all the grants that you see and SG-enabled support schemes and all that, there's no age criteria for it, and certainly they are not just targeted for young people. We have a hospital to work transition program going on. That's just one of the programs that we have that helps people who for some reason have lost some functionality and needs help in getting back into the workforce. That program aims to help them. Yeah, so that is just an example of one of the things that we do to help older workers. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any urgent questions? Is that okay if I go to our next panelist?
Hiro-san? Yes.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you. So may I now invite Miss Marissa Lee Medjeral-Mills, again from Singapore, but from a DPO perspective. So floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Again. With my presentation, I'll be talking about Disabled People's Association and our Access Guide projects. So if I could see the presentation. Great, thank you. So what we do is we have disability-led programs, and especially for our access guides, they are disability-led. Next slide, please. So just a bit about our organization. I won't go through all of this, but basically we are an organization that really pushes for disability leadership and promoting inclusion through interaction with persons with disabilities. The idea is basically people without disabilities shouldn't be talking about disability, right? And teaching people what it is to have a disability. So we have our membership, and we work with them to do our programs. Next slide. Sorry, I can't see the slide. Something is going on with my screen.
Oh. Now I see a slide. It says cultural environment. Are you able to see the slide?
Give me a second. I'm only seeing half the slide. Never mind. I'm going to go my memory. Okay, so I think I was giving some background on what Singapore is like. You've already heard a lot from SG Enable and the great work that they're doing, but I was going to talk more about how Singapore has a lot of initiatives and policies to do with promoting disability inclusion. We have these multi-year plans called the Enabling Master Plans, but as well-meaning as they are, they're not always conceptualized and implemented by persons with disabilities. So one of the things that makes our initiative more unique is that we are really getting persons with disabilities to push through accessibility and inclusion learnings. I believe in that same slide, I also mentioned that there is a growing sector of disability inclusion and awareness and accessibility. The government announced that they would be doing audits on all the public museums, accessibility audits. And we believe that that's definitely an area of growth where we can get our members involved, and it could be a good revenue stream for our membership and our organization, whilst also being about promoting accessibility. Next slide. Okay, I can see 1/3 of this slide, so I believe that it was to do with our Access Guide initiative.
Can a technical person do something about it so that she can see a slide in totality? Anyway, all right, go ahead.
I'm not sure if other people are seeing this, so it's just my screen, but I'm seeing a split screen of you, Aiko, and I'm seeing half of my slide. So.
That's true. I see you, and then I see half of a slide. Yeah.
Okay, you know what? I'm just going to go with what I remember.
All right.
So we work with our members. We train them up to be inclusion ambassadors. So they go out and do inclusive customer service training, and they also do these access guides. We have partnered with a local consultancy called Level Field Consultants. They're also disability-led and trained to do accessibility audits. We piloted a project with the National Gallery of Singapore, who are very, generous in supporting us and paying for this project. And we worked with our members. We worked off the audit. We did a user experience. We looked at the user experience of persons with disabilities in the gallery. We came up with recommendations that the gallery could look at. And then we put through an access guide that would help persons with disabilities plan, and their families and their friends, plan a trip to the museum. The idea was not to tell the museum which group of disabilities of people can come to visit museum. The idea is to give the information that people need to make their own decisions, because not everybody with a disability who has the same disability will have the same needs, right? So by knowing how big a door is, knowing how big a small step is, knowing how much strength is needed to open a bathroom door, these are the kind of things that people can make up their own decisions and empower them to make these, to decide, can I go to this gallery? Can I go to this space? Can I go to this exhibit or not? So that's what we did with National Gallery of Singapore. And I have a link on the slides to people can watch a video, a news article video about what the gallery is doing. Next slide. This is where I just share more about the Inclusion Ambassador Program in this slide, about how, other than the Access Guide, we're also promoting this disability-led learning about inclusion and access. And our Inclusion Ambassadors to date have trained or given workshops to over 12,000 people since about 2013, if I remember correctly. And really, it is about also the people without disabilities and the public learning from persons with disabilities, rather than it usually being the other way around, right? Where people are seen as beneficiaries of care and help. Persons with disabilities are leading this change. Next slide. Oh, I believe I'm sharing here in this slide two other innovative practices that are also doing disability-led inclusion in the area of, one is a cultural side and one is to do with accessibility mapping. Equal Dreams is an organization here that is about sign language interpretation, accessibility on social media, accessibility in institutes of higher learning, but they've also been working hand in hand with museums and galleries to promote accessibility being built into art and cultural experiences and theater experiences from the very start. So it's not just an add-on later on. And it's very much also about disability-led inclusion. The other one I'm talking about is the Smart BFA Mapping Project, which is also interesting because it is about mapping accessible routes in Singapore with persons with disabilities. So again, they are empowered to be part of the process, to share information and knowledge that they have gathered, but also people then can make decisions about accessibility based on that information that is gathered and crowdsourced and shared. We are working with them, disclosure, on our mapping in accessibility. So of course I want to give them the props for doing this initiative and doing it the right way. So the thing that ties us all together, we're all about access and inclusion and promoting accessibility in the built environment, but also in arts and culture and public institutions. But it's always about bringing persons with disabilities along and really taking, their lead in terms of validating everything and putting it together. Next slide.
Your voice became a little bit softer, maybe because of your microphone setting.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Is it better?
Can Hiro-san and all hear her? Okay. All right, go ahead.
Okay. I believe, if I remember correctly, from what I'm seeing of the slide, talking about next steps. Okay, so the future steps for our Access Guide project in our Inclusion Ambassador program is to really encourage museums and art galleries, public museums in Singapore to all do Access Guides, because really it is something that should be standard practice to have Access Guides on the websites, public websites, so that people really have the information they need to plan their visits and to see if it's right for them or not, so that there's no surprises when they show up. And we believe that this is especially the case during the pandemic, where local tourism is encouraged, right? Because we can't travel as much. Let's rediscover Singapore, which was a big initiative of the Singapore Tourism Board. So we really think that this is something that all public places of interest should be doing. We are working with National Gallery of Singapore to update our access guides based on the changes that they did from our feedback from the first round. So it's great that they're continuing this process. We're working with another museum, the Asian Civilizations Museum, not to audit their physical environment, but also their programs now as well. Again, with level field consultants. And we want to, I can't see this last line, but I believe that we are also working to expand our inclusion ambassador pool. Yeah, I hope I remembered everything I had for my presentation. Yeah, so I basically
half of the slide. Yeah, I think you're covering. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, basically in Singapore, just to preempt any questions that you were having, Aiko, in Singapore, we have the Code on Accessibility in the Built Environment. All new buildings need to be accessible to families and persons with disabilities and older persons. Is there more to be done? Definitely. Because for us, something that has come up during the pandemic is it's one thing to have accessibility in place. It is a very different thing to have it remain accessible during disruption. And in Singapore, whilst we had the pandemic, we had safe entry and trace together apps that is about tracking your location so that you get COVID, this the track and trace. It also meant that there were designated entry points and exit points from public places, and crowds were streamed a certain way, and it actually meant that a lot of accessible routes were no longer accessible anymore.
Oh,
so it's a thing to remember that accessibility must remain during disruption, pandemic, accessible, safe entry, but also during construction, renovations. All these things mean that accessible routes aren't really always sustained through these processes. So that's something that we are trying to now also look at, reminding people that, even in disruption, we need to make sure there's an alternative route for persons with disabilities. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Marissa. Round of applause, please. Thank you very much for preempting my questions. But that's obviously, it's very true for many Asian countries that we have a lot of a technical code for accessibility for new buildings. So that begs a question about what should we do about existing buildings and other things, which might be also a universal issue. But also you mentioned about COVID-19 poses challenges for accessibility efforts you're doing. But just one quick question. So all the inclusive ambassadors are paid, right, to do the accessibility check and give advice?
Yes. Currently, what we do is we profit share with them for the engagements. We would like to, of course, pay them more, because right now I think we can pay our inclusion ambassadors the equivalent of about 150 Singapore dollars per an hour to our engagement. In the future, we hope to be able to pay enough to make this a full-time job. But for now, as we grow the program, we are just profit sharing.
All right, $150 Singapore dollars is how much in American dollar?
About 100, I guess.
Okay,
roughly.
Got it. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you, Marissa. Now we'd like to go, last but not least, Kumiko Fujiwara-san from Japan, and we'd like to hear what you have to say about your practice and accessibility. Floor is yours, Kumiko-san. You have 5 to 7 minutes.
出てますかね?
Yes, you're on.
Yeah. スライド出てますか? はい。
Yes.
はい。
Yes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kumiko Fujiwara. I'm represented DPI Women with Disability. And I represent the DPI Women with Disabilities Network, or DWNJ. I visual impairment in my 30s. So my disability, one eye being, but others saw me as if I'm not. When I became pregnant, my mother and medical doctor recommended that I should abort my baby. Just like this, many people with disabilities are denied their existence. Next slide, please. I first learned about intersectional discrimination when I joined DWNJ, and now I'm fighting against it. Intersectional discrimination is based on two or more grounds. Women with disabilities, like myself, face discrimination borders person with disability or other women. And next, DWNJ was organized in 1986 in Japan, and another group had worked to abolish the Eugenic Protection Act in Japan and to advance independence and empowerment of women with disabilities. Next, please. We also raise awareness through publication policy advocacy. In 2020, we ran a questionnaire to collect the voices of disabled women who were affected by COVID-19. Next, please. Prior to COVID-19, DWNJ introduced online communication systems like Skype for the monthly meeting, so that members and interested individuals who live in distant areas can participate in the discussion. This enabled a smooth transition from partial to full online meeting. Next, please. At the same time, we had concern disabled women tend to be left behind in new opportunities and technologies. They may therefore face further polarization and more difficulties to lack of access to such emerging online systems. So we planned and conducted hands-on online meeting practice sessions for disabled women using Zoom. Next, please. These hands-on sessions highlight the empowerment of disabled women through technology and made our community stronger, allowing people in isolation to actively participate in events. Next, please. For our workshops and regular meetings, we also introduced new software for closed captioning. Nearly 80 people, including people with hearing and visual disability, joined the hands-on session and related training. After the workshop, some of the participants hosted their own online events. As I said previously, many have experienced the denial of their existence. Many of them were using the technology for the very first time, taking on important steps for more information and opportunities. Next, please. Next, please. For further development and advancement of ICT technology, participation of disabled people is essential. Nothing about us without us. Next, please. Thank you. We're always very grateful supporters like you.
Thank you very much, Kumiko-san, for your very succinct story, but you really touch upon very, very important issues of intersectionality of women and disability. But your personal story that you began with is something that we really need to reflect upon ourselves. And this hidden, ideology and thinking about eugenics is something that you've been, battling against, which is pretty much appreciated. But then again, in terms of accessibility, you pointed out that we cannot, help living in digitalized world, and then you empower cross-disability women with disabilities through organizing this regular training, regular getting together, right? Which is which sounds like, very simple thing, but that not too many people might be doing it on regular basis. So I think that's very important. Thank you very much. So Hiro-san, from the audience over there, are there any questions or comments? I think that rest of the time we are open to have open discussions about any of the panelists or topics that are discussed.
Please raise your hand, or anyone? Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. I'm Khalil from World Vision Iraq. My question would be about the second panelist, inclusive farm greenhouses. So it is very interesting that you are establishing business for people living with disability to increase their capacity for income generation. So I'm asking, how are you selecting your beneficiaries with different disability? So are you consulting the community? Are you consulting the relevant governmental departments or other health specialists during the selection?
Yeah, shall I answer?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Actually, we haven't got that far. Our program was discussed with our counterpartner in DPRK, and they liked the idea, and we agreed on trying to make it happen. And we just got the UN sanctioned waiver, and for the whole program was not completed yet. But with the concept proposal, we have a UN sanctioned waivers, and there was we had to go to visit the site and talk to the community and who will be included. We have to do the recruiting and those kind of things. That was in plan, but unfortunately, because of the COVID strike the program, so we were not able to go that far. But your point is very meaningful, and we would like to consider for the accessibility wise, of course, those things should be included. And when we are recruiting, selecting different types, and as you mentioned, those things should be implemented. But we haven't got that far. But the kind of structure in DPRK is quite unique, and it's not something like in outside of DPRK is quite different. So it's quite unique atmosphere, but the inclusive way for diversify the people who work for greenhouse should be implemented, I think.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Gentleman from Iraq, our general consensus in Asia Pacific is to promote inclusive vocational training and then inclusive education so that the persons with disabilities and persons without disabilities would also receive vocational training together. While we see that the specialized training for persons with disabilities is going on, but also I think that the idea which is important in terms of CRPD is respecting choices of persons with disabilities in terms of what they want to do and what kind of skills they want to develop. All right.
We'll keep that in mind. Thank you for advice, and we would love to learn more, and all ideas are welcome. And please send me your email, and I'll be happy to discuss further and make the program better.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or points
Yes.
From the floor?
Yes, hi, my name is Ariane Waldvogel. I'm from the Pro Victimis Foundation based in Geneva. Thanks a lot for all your presentation, which is quite inspiring. I have a question to any of you or some of you, whoever is, much more about the replicability of your initiatives in, I would say, less urban areas of your countries to be able to reach out to PWDs who are, more isolated in your respective countries. Thank you.
Okay, I think Singapore being a sort of a urban nation, so to speak, but still there are some differences in more like a extremely urban area and a more a little bit less urban area. But let's say maybe whoever would like to, yes, go ahead, Marissa.
Hi. So the thing I wanted to say in terms of replicating the work we're doing in other countries, the main idea behind it is just that persons with disabilities should be the one leading any sort of access and inclusion initiative, right? And that can be super urban kind of projects like what we're doing with museums and galleries that are relevant in big cities. But the idea actually comes from, kind of community-based rehabilitation, right? Where the idea is you teach people to continue rehabilitation back in rural areas where you might not have access to professionals, right? So that's kind of where we got the idea of doing this kind of work, where we kind of skill up the persons with disabilities to carry on the work. We give them the initial kickstart, right? And then the idea is that they go on to develop these skills, use them, and then, continue on developing the program in a way that is, unique and relevant to them. So, if we were to do this not in a city, maybe in the countryside, there are always going to be public services that are available in the countryside, be it hospitals, be it doctors, be it government buildings, any sort of, government services will probably need access guides as well. And that information needs to be disseminated to the community about who can go in, what barriers are in place, what accessible features are in place. If anything like that can be, audited by persons with disabilities, even just on a basic user experience level, that's already a step in the right direction, right? So you're skilling up persons with disabilities to give user experience feedback on the accessibility of various government services or public services in a way that isn't just personal experience feedback, it's, disability experience feedback. And that can be replicated in many other places, not just in urban cities or big cities like Singapore.
All right, thank you, Marissa. I think just being in Thailand, I've known that there are a lot of countrysides where going into a hospital might take 40 minutes or 15 minutes, where in the urban area it might be much shorter. So there is obviously a restriction of mobility and an availability of resources. So when it comes to accessibility check and realization of accessibility, there might be differences in conditions and implementation. But I agree with Marissa that this, really nothing about us without us concept should be put in place in the first place, to put into practice, to replicate the essence of it, but not in details. Nurul, do you have something to say about this in response to the urban-rural differences? You are more talking about overview of services for persons with disabilities, but any insight?
Hi, okay. Actually, Pusat Ehsan has 2 branches, so we covers all districts of Brunei Darussalam. And if they are living in rural areas, we provide home-based learning and rehab as well. And we actually will not reject any person with disabilities that wants our services and education as well. So we cater to everyone that wish to have our services actually.
Kumiko-san, any insight about this question about, in your case, you're more talking about online-based connections, so maybe it doesn't matter rural or country or urban side, maybe it does matter, so please respond.
Hi. はい、やはり日本の中でも特に交通などに関してはやはり地方と、都心部で大きく変わることはあります。でただ今回発表させてもらったZoom のようなものを使って、そういった格差がなくなるという意味ではだいぶ格差が縮まるという意味では情報が、いかにすべての障害者に伝わるかっていうところで大きな変革をもたらすのではないかなと思います。
Okay, it is true that there's a gaps and differences in transportation between the rural areas and urban areas in Japan as well. But in terms of the online communication, just we did in the workshops, the access to information, regardless they live in rural areas or urban areas, can be the situation can be can be improved, I guess.
Okay, so digitalization can fill in the gap. Okay, thank you very much. So Hiro-san, any views of yourself or any other intervention from the board?
Let me, you know, this is supposed to be Asian Summit. This is slightly awesome title there. Frankly, well, I'm happen to be familiar with what's happening in Singapore. It's way ahead of a lot of other countries, you know. It shows in terms of quality and the perspective and all that. Having said this, we're supposed to be having a discussion at Asian Summit. And the overall theme of this year's Zero is accessibility. So Aiko is striving to bring us back to the theme of accessibility. But I think just be practical about this. After all, this is an opportunity, those of you who are in the audience, as well as who are listening to us, Asia is a vast area. I mean, I'm saying something you already know. It's challenging to try to embrace, for instance, I'm not challenging the Secretariat for that. South Asia, for instance, you have absolutely fascinating programs going on in India, and Bangladesh, I know personally. And when you talk about the Asia Pacific, as you know, UN actually divides Asia because it's such a vast territory. So Aiko is responsible for Asia Pacific. There is a UN, another economic commission in West Asia. So it tells you how vast territories are. Now, the mission of a Zero project, which we all admire, is to replicate, is to find out the innovative program which has an impact, learn from each other. That's why we gather, God forbid, you know, the corona situation would permit us back again, but we're trying to deal with that with use of technology. I just want to remind us, as we go on another remaining 25 minutes or so, as you intervene, keep in mind what is it we should do to help Zero Project to help us to find a way of a more efficient way of finding what others are doing within the region. And not necessarily creating the other Asian version of Zero Project, but I think we need to be realistic. That since we're having Asian Summit, allow me to tell you, share that with you. I think if we try to look at what is it, the challenge we have now, to make use of all the vast talents and experiences And how are we going to more efficiently find a way of replicating, learn from each other, not waiting every year till February and come together, oh my God, that's fantastic. I know Zero project teams are constantly trying to encourage you to share and so forth, but I think there is a limit to this. So I just want you to keep that in mind as you make intervention. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hiro-san. Any burning questions? Is that okay for me to share a little bit about what's happening in Thailand?
There's a one from audience, so Aiko, you can answer.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Hello, thank you all very much for your presentations today. My name is Tommy Sarche. I come from the United States Rochester Institute of Technology, and we actually have a number of partners in Southeast Asia, which is why my colleague Dr. Chris and I are here to learn some more. I actually have two questions. I'm not sure if I should ask them both or one at a time. But with regards to employment, to any one of the panelists who talked about the employment initiatives you're working on, I was wondering whether you have some data or some information more specifically about the employment outcomes for specific disabled groups. Are some groups facing greater barriers to employment as opposed to other, or greater accessibility challenges in their workplaces as opposed to others? And if you could share a little bit about that. And my second question is kind of related to the feedback on those persons with disabilities who have gained employment. What have been their experiences, or what do they see are still some barriers or challenges they would like to see addressed in the future, either within their own company that they're working for, or in supporting others of their group that are disabled in pursuing employment in other sectors? Thank you.
Thank you very much for those two questions. Can I ask any volunteer for the first question? Perhaps Ms. Choo?
Okay, very good question. I suppose the starting point for employment is always strengths-based. We put people into jobs that best fit their strengths, abilities, and interests. Now, that said, if I were to be very blunt about it, there are some disability types, in a sense, where who can find jobs and good jobs with less help. For example, persons with physical disabilities tend to have less of an issue. I won't guess a reason why, but that is the case. Whereas persons with cognitive kinds of disabilities tend to have more of an issue, and I think we need to put more of our efforts into figuring out how to better support them in employment. In Singapore, for example, as in I think in many parts of the world, we are seeing a higher incidence of autism spectrum disorder, and with greater numbers of such people coming into the workforce, of course, we would have to tweak the way we support them to improve their employment outcomes. Certain types of disabilities like visual impairment, we are actually seeing less of in Singapore now. So yes, how we approach the whole issue of supporting people with disabilities employment might need some fundamental retweaking. So yes, I suppose the short answer to that is, on a practical basis, yes, we see a difference with people suffering or people having cognitive impairments facing more challenges in being placed, getting a job, and sustaining a job. I'm not sure if the other panelists actually have the same experience in their own countries. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So let's ask Kumiko-san. Do you share the same views as Ms. Choo, that persons with cognitive disabilities have faced more barriers in accessing to general employment in the labor market and sustaining the employment?
Right. Thank you. 日本はまず前提として手帳制度があって、手帳を持っている人しかカウントされないっていう一つ大きな問題がある。で、特にそういう認知症であるとか、発達障害という人たちっていうのは手帳を取ること自体にハードルがあって、非常に困難を持っているんだけれども、その障害者として認められていないというような困難もあると思います。で、そのことでデータが取れないっていうことで、やはりそういった問題も可視化されないっていう一つ大きな問題がある。そして特に障害のある女性というカテゴリーでいうと、雇用の分野で日本ではその男女別のデータっていうのをほとんど取らないっていう一つ大きな課題もあって、で収入の格差なんかも本当は、すごく大きくあるんですけれども、そういったものも可視化されていないっていうのも大きな課題だと考えています。ちょっと答えになってないかもしれないです。
Yes, no, I understood.
Okay. So in terms of Japan, the disabled.
Can the interpreter speak a little bit louder, please? Sorry.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of the disability service system in Japan, the disabled people must register and obtain the disability ID card from the government. So the only for those who has got the disability, the ID can be is recognized as a disabled person through the in the public service systems. But for the people with developmental disabilities, they often face the difficulties and barriers to apply for the registration. So that which leads to that they are not recognized as a disabled person from the public service system. So they are not counted as disabled, even though they have many difficulties in to adapt to the workplace. So also this is one of the problems. And also
yes, there are also go ahead.
About the disabled women. Sorry.
Right.
So another problem is about the disabled women, women with disabilities. So in Japan, we barely have the statistics on the employment, the gendered statistics of the disabled people. So it makes invisible of the makes the difficulties of the disabled women faces invisible. So for example, disabled women has got less income than the disabled men. So this situation is not recognized and invisible by the public services. So which is the problem.
Okay, thank you very much. So any other views about who is left behind in accessing employment and sustaining employment? And I think we are talking more, both social welfare-based schemes and then in the general labor market. Any other views from the floor, from the audience about this particular issue? Lady who asked the question?
Yeah, there's a question from audience here, Aiko.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Take this off. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Curtis from People's Action for Inclusive Development, formerly Light for the World Cambodia. We worked in this space looking at a job coach program, linking up job seekers with employers, and we were actually here presented last year around that. This year we've reflected on that a lot, and two gaps that we've really seen are people with cognitive disabilities and also with more severe disabilities, and we've really been questioned about what are we doing for that. So we are researching at the moment, but but we're not finding an awful lot of success from our region in that area. So this is a bit of a request to everyone. If there's some good practice, some good examples, please share, because we're really trying to build a body of knowledge around this. Different types of employment, different practices, etc. We're struggling, and you know, we've had a lot of really good successes with job placements, but we're not reaching everyone. And we're doing okay, but we want to do better. So it's a real request to everyone in our in our group. If there's some good practice, some good examples, then yeah, be really great to share. So it's maybe it's a comment and a request. So thank you, everyone.
No, thank you very much for your information. If you can go to Make the Light Real website.
Yeah.
That, you know, you see the logo on top of my which one? This one. You do search Make the Light Real, and then you go leads to that website, and there is a publication published by ESCAP last year on employment and disability, where I think there are some theories and approaches and good practices. That's my contribution to your question.
Yeah, thanks.
Then I don't know who can organize and coordinate all the good practices from the panelists. Maybe Sumita, and Sumita can you can contact Sumita, right?
Yes, I'm actually here and taking on all these notes.
Oh,
so hi.
Yeah.
So at the end of this panel, what will essentially happen is the Zero Project will put together all of these innovations, all of these cultural differences between some of the panelists that we've heard, and also from other panelists that weren't able to join us today, and try and get a real good, strong overview of how things are in Asia when it comes to cultural differences, differences with disabilities, and the discrimination that they face, as well as a collection of some of these innovative practices and policies that we've come through over this last year, and also some of the new ones that have been introduced by some of our panelists. So this will be sort of a handbook to Asia that we're hoping to publish at the end of this conference, so probably in time before summer it should be ready.
Yes.
Thank you.
Coming back to a question posed by a lady about employment, I just like to point out that generally in Asian Pacific, kind of industry that persons with disabilities end up working either through social welfare scheme or others, like a hospitality industry, or like a bakery, and then what do you call that kind of industry? Is the selling also confectionery, and those are very, very popular industries. Do you agree, our panelists? They are nodding their heads. So I wonder what's happening maybe in Europe. Do you see the same thing? Those who are in Europe or in the States or in any other parts of the world. Over to you, Hiro-san and others at the venue.
If I could just jump in here, Aiko. It's Sumita here. I think it's also kind of interesting the differences that we see in disability employment when it comes to the situation in Europe versus in Asia. But I think this also hinges on a lot of cultural understandings of what disability is and what people with disabilities can contribute. And I put that in inverted commas because I feel like in a lot of countries in Asia, it's the model of disability that we are still looking at is still very much a medicalized model. It's not so much a social model, which definitely impacts the types of jobs that are offered to people with disabilities, or even the types of industries that are open to people with disabilities. And I have to say that I think the COVID pandemic, as devastating as it was for everyone in the world, I think it definitely opened up and showed us how easily things can be changed when things need to be changed. And it opened up a lot of opportunities for people with disabilities when it comes to non-traditional job industries and sectors, if I could say that. So hopefully we don't have to wait for another pandemic before we find out, just what kind of opportunities can be created. But I think we also have to caution.
I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, we also have to caution ourselves in comparing Asia to Europe, because it's so vastly different when it comes to the history of disability and the history of human rights, and it comes to even the way of advocating because of politics or whatever it is. So I think we have to keep that in mind as well. I'm not quite sure if that answered your question, but that's just some thoughts I had. But happy to hear from the audience and any other panelists. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, any feedback from the audience?
Yes, I see Tommy raising a hand.
Hi, this is Tommy again. Actually, it's kind of maybe a question or comment, thinking about how to be efficient in sharing what we're doing and continuing to have this dialogue beyond the conference. Is it possible for Zero Project to have like a social media stream or a place where each of these organizations can give updates very briefly on, you know, events or new data that they're producing, to keep that conversation going so that before we meet again next year, people can continually be in touch about what they're working on?
Thank you for that, Tommy. So as part of the Zero Project, we do have this initiative called Communities. And I am looking to start one that focuses on Asia region. So we do have representatives that are welcome to join us. And this is where you can put up updates. And all of this will be shared with the Zero Project's networks, databases. We have thousands of people that we reach out to. So yes, this is something we are looking to launch. So this Zero Project Asia Summit was kind of a soft launch to kind of see the interest and participation of people, and I think it's going really well. So this is definitely something that we'll be launching in summer of this year. Thank you.
Okay, any other inputs?
Aiko, I'm just looking at the time right now. We have 7 minutes left, so we might have to start wrapping up. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we have covered many grounds, but I guess maybe one of the each panelist can just say one final comment. 30 seconds to one minute each person. So could I start with Nurul?
Thank you, Aiko. So this has been a great platform for ASEA to share what we are doing, and we hope that we can collaborate in the future for the employment of people with disabilities. I know it's different for Europe and Asia, but in the future we can exchange ideas and suggestions or issues that we can solve together. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And then Miss Ellie.
Hello, thank you for inviting me to this forum, and I've learned a lot from all the panelists. It was a wonderful experience for me to learn. And also for Asia, as a perspective of Asia, the population in Asia is uncomparable with other continents. And the culture and the name of the countries are so diverse. So it's not really, it's not easy, and it's not really rooted from the one cultural kind of background. It's too diverse. So I think it might be necessary and those situations are pretty different, because of what we have experienced with one of the neglected country. So that's what we are learning from that too, because we don't know each other very well. So the approach from that is kind of necessary for Asia. We need some more customized kind of way to make the program more fruitful. And definitely I think I will continue to learn more through this project. I'm very grateful to meet all of you, and welcome to reach me out through Shamita. Please arrange other meetings. I'm very eager to participate, and I would also like to update the project that we are continuing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vi. Yeah, precisely. We cannot have one united voice of Asia. In fact, all of the panelists today come either from Southeast Asia or North and East Asia. So we are missing people from the Pacific. and then South Asia and Central Asia. So perhaps next year at the Zero project, we can have an Asian and Pacific summit where we can have more diverse views about whatever the theme given. Anyway, so Ms. Choo, please.
I totally agree with Ms. Aiko and Ms. Ellie. Asia is so diverse, there is probably no Asia, so I think it's been a great sharing experience to hear from the experience of Ms. Lee, who, well, the thought about what happens in DPRK never crossed my mind at all until today, to be honest. And hearing from Ms. Fujiwara as well, the situation of women with disabilities in Japan. So it's been a great learning experience for me. And I have to say that even a small country like Singapore, I don't hear very much from Marissa, though I do know her in a professional basis. So yes, it takes a conference of involving people over a few thousand miles for us to learn about what our various programs are. So we hope there's more sharing in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Marissa?
Hi. Yeah, I think, we echo the same thing about Asia. And I think what is interesting about Asia, because, if you were to compare where we are in terms of disability legislation and disability rights, it's very different, across different places in Asia. But what is, I guess, interesting to learn from what we've done here is how to advocate for change in a way that isn't following the rights-based framework, right? Obviously, we here in this community believe in a rights-based approach, but how do we push policy, forward without using these standard models of advocacy that is working in Europe and working in America? When you have a legislative framework, we don't have that. So what do we do next, right? And that's something that what we learn from doing in one place in Asia will help us in other places in Asia that doesn't have this legislative framework. We are only at the beginning stages in Singapore of looking at employment discrimination legislation. And we're just in the conversation stages of it and the consultation stages of it. So, we definitely think that there's things that we can learn in terms of strategies and hacks and share with each other. It's great to hear what's happening, my colleagues around Asia as well. And also, to be able to proudly share this with other people at Zero Project. So thank you very much for having us.
Thank you, Marissa. And then Kumiko-san.
Thank you. Yeah.そうですね。やっぱりこういう技術で、皆さんと本当にこのコロナ禍でもこうしてつながれたことっていうのは本当に素晴らしいことだなって思うんですけれども、やはりこういったオンラインのシステムにまだまだつながれない、障害のある女性たちっていうのは日本のようなテクノロジーが本当こう進んでいると思われている国であってもまだまだいます。でその理由は様々で、貧困であるとか、虐待を受けているとか、すごくこう閉鎖された中に生活しているっていう人たちもたくさんいるんですね。なので、こういった技術で、あとそうですね、私は視覚障害っていうのは、やはりこういう情報保障というところで、なんか格差ができてしまう。情報が入らないことで、やはり使えない、最新の技術が使えないということもあります。アクセシビリティっていう時には、はい、考えるときにはそういった情報の面のアクセシビリティっていうのもこう考えてやっていかないといけないのでやはりこういったところには障害のある女性というのを必ず中心に置いて考えていくべきだと思っています。以上です。
Okay, do you hear me?
Yes.
So, and it is great to meet all of you, even under the COVID-19 pandemic. So through the online technology enabled us to get together. But as I said, there's still many disabled women stumble to access to these kind of online technologies, and the reasons are so varied because of the poverty or the isolation or abuse. So and also in addition, I myself has got a visual impairment, so which means I have got a lot of barriers and difficulties in obtaining information as well as the online technology. So to implement the advancement of the access to technology, so the perspective of disabled women is essential, I believe. Yes.
Thank you very much, Kumiko-san. I think we learned a lot, and I feel that, as Kumiko-san said, maybe it doesn't matter if you are in Asia or Europe or Pacific or developed countries or in developing countries. In some areas, like for example, women with disabilities face the same kind of information barrier issues or other issues. So there are something which are common to all disability community around the world, and then there might be something which is very specific to certain contexts. But we've been hearing some top-down approach on ensuring social services for persons with disabilities and bottom-up initiatives on accessibility and disability inclusion at companies, and then self-help networking utilizing digital technology, and then international cooperation. So I think we cover many grounds, and then we hope to be able to continue to share good practices in duplicating good practices and then learning more. Thank you very much. Over back to you, Sumita and Hiro.
Thank you so much for your participation, and look forward to continue dialogue with you all. Bye.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So we are leaving online.
Yes, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a nice day, you guys. But we are late after.